All right, let's jump right in. What if we thought about religion not as just a list of rules, but as a perfect state of balance? Today, we're going to break down a really powerful framework from Mahmoud Nassar. It's all about this idea of religion as a constant, dynamic equilibrium between what you believe on the inside and what you actually do on the outside.
And really, this quote is the central idea that's going to guide us through this whole explainer. It's a simple but, incredibly profound equation. You've got faith on one side and righteous action on the other. True religion from this perspective is that sweet spot where those two sides meet in perfect balance. So, how do you actually achieve that?
Well, according to the source material we're looking at, this balance isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. Nope, it's a real structure, one that's held up by two absolutely foundational pillars.
And here they are. So on one hand, you have faith. That's al-iman in Arabic. This is your deep internal foundation, what you truly believe in your heart and in your mind. And on the other hand, you have right action, or al-amal as-salih. This is the external stuff, how you actually express that belief out in the world. It's really important to get this. They aren't separate things. They're two parts of a single, totally integrated system. You can think of it like this. One is the engine, and the other is the motion it creates. You can't have one without the other.
Okay, so let's dive into that first pillar. Let's talk about faith. What does it actually mean to believe? What are the essential components that make up this internal belief system?
So at its very core, faith is defined as the complete acceptance of the religion's principles. And I want to stress that word complete. We're not talking about just a casual agreement or kind of nodding along. No, this is a deep, unshakable internal conviction. This right here is the starting point, that spiritual engine we mentioned that powers everything else. Now, this framework gets really specific. It breaks that conviction down into 5 distinct articles. First up, you have belief in God. That then extends to belief in his angels, his books, and in his messengers, the ones who deliver those messages. And finally, there's belief in the last day. These 5 things, taken together, they form the absolute bedrock of this internal pillar of faith. All right, so we've got the internal side down. Now let's move over to the other side of that scale. If faith is the internal belief, then right action is its absolutely necessary external counterpart. So the big question is, how does that intensely personal faith get made, real? How does it become tangible out in the world? Okay, so right action isn't just one big, vague concept. It's actually expressed in 2 major domains of life. The first is worship, or al-ibadats. This is all about our relationship with God. The second part is transactions, muamalats, and this governs our relationships with each other and the world around us.
So let's focus in on that first domain for a second. Worship, or al-ibadat. This is really the most direct spiritual expression of a person's faith. A great way to think of it is as the vertical connection. These are the practices that directly link a believer to the divine.
So what does that look like in practice? Well, it takes several key forms. We're talking about things like the declaration of testimony, the ritual of prayer, the act of giving charity, the discipline of fasting, and the incredible journey of pilgrimage. These are the core rituals that allow a person to actively demonstrate and reinforce their faith.
But, and this is super important, the expression of faith doesn't just stop with rituals. Now we shift to the second part of right action, transactions, or al-mu'amalats. And if worship was that vertical connection to God, think of this as the horizontal one. This is what guides a person's interactions with everyone else.
And the scope here is just, wow, it's incredible. We're not just talking about being a good neighbor. Transactions cover everything from the principles of justice and social life to the ethics of politics and business and even the very laws that structure a society. What this really means is that faith is meant to be a guiding force in literally every single aspect of both public and private life. It's huge. Okay, so let's bring it all back to that central theme we started with, right? The idea of balance. We've looked at the internal pillar of faith, and we've explored the external pillar of right action. Now it's time to put them back on those scales and see how they work together. And here's the crucial takeaway, the whole point of this framework. It's this simple but incredibly powerful equation. See, faith without action. It's just an idea floating around in your head. And action without faith, well, it lacks its spiritual soul, its purpose. They have to work together, in perfect harmony, to achieve that equilibrium that defines what it means to live a complete religious life.
And that leaves us with a final thought to really chew on. We've just walked through this amazing framework where private belief and public action are basically 2 sides of the same coin,
constantly trying to find that perfect balance. So the question I want to leave you with is this. How does that dynamic, that constant push and pull, that tension and harmony between what we believe on the inside and what we do on the outside, how does that ultimately shape the world that all of us live in?